of Allegiance is so rough, I'm going to nominate Mr. McKnight as our last person in tonight to do the Pledge of Allegiance for us.
My pleasure.
And we will mouth along, and hopefully that will make it less awkward.
Are you ready?
I am. I'd like to call this regular meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission, to order. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. McKnight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
United
republic
States of America, the
for which it
republic
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
under God,
liberty and justice for all.
indivisible,
Excellent.
liberty and
Thank
justice for all.
Play ball.
This
Nice try,
will
Chairman.
call the roll.
Chairman Sema,
Here.
Alderman Fauci,
Here.
Mr. Bolazina,
I am here.
Mr. McKnight,
Here.
Mr. Malin Smith,
Here.
Miss Miller,
Here.
Miss Munzel,
Here.
Dr. O'Mell,
Here.
and Mr. White.
Here,
And you're
I have
horizontal
here.
tonight, not vertical.
I have
A little
here
bit
as
jaundiced.
absent, we have a quorum.
Next up is the approval of our minutes from our November 18th, 2020 meeting. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Got a motion? Do I have a second?
second,
Seconded by Mr.
Second.
White. Any changes or amendments? Mr. Malin Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's one obvious change that needs to take place on page 3, paragraph 2. I appreciate the title. I'm no longer Alderman Malin Smith.
Oh, that's bad.
Old habit.
Not so obvious point, just if you will, a clarification. As I read through the minutes, it was unclear, at least to me, that the decision was made that petitions for modifications or for exceptions to the sign code would be made by or directed to the Board of Aldermen. I thought that was part of our decision making at the last meeting.
So if I could speak on that, Chairman.
Please do.
So the motion that was made didn't specify a section that the motion was to be inserted into. So Ryan and I discussed that sections 420, 120C.3, 130B.2, and 140C.2, those are all conditional use within the sign code. So it would add language into that section saying that any signs containing letters of their maximum permitted height would be a conditional use.
And that would come automatically to the Board of Aldermen for.
It would come to the Planning and Zoning Commission and then the Board of Aldermen.
Fine, I appreciate that clarification, Mr. Chairman, and Laura, thank you.
Can we call the Alderman Malin Smith the Scrivener's error? I don't think we need to amend
Yeah.
this, do we?
Yes, I apologize. It's force of habit.
All right, any other discussion or amendments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
aye,
Motion appears to carry unanimously. Next up, old business agenda item number 1, a zoning text amendment and amendment to the regulations of exterior lighting, section 405.157, specifically exemptions, continued from the November 18th, 2020 meeting. Mr. Spencer.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Following the meeting in November, and after receiving feedback from Commissioners Bolazina and White, staff took another run at the draft for the exterior lighting amendments. Basically what I've tried to do is organize it in a straightforward manner in terms of permitted lighting types, baking into it the additional language that's been suggested by the commissioners. So we have a general requirement section, which has basically been untouched this through the periods of review, that talk about luminaire orientation, intensity at the property line, which we all agree is 0.5 is a good standard, and mounting height no higher than 15 feet. And then under permitting lighting types, I've organized it into 6 different types to kind of encapsulate all of the different regulations that we've been talking about. So we have architectural lighting, which is the lighting of a primary structure for aesthetic decorative purposes. Dennis, your language about lighting of the structure shall only be permitted on the street front elevation of the primary single family structure can be found there. We've got a note about the ground level architectural lighting should be shielded, and it has to be contained on the vertical surface of the elevation. The other next type of lighting is entrance lighting for pedestrian and vehicular entrances of the primary structure and/or conforming accessory structure. Dennis, that's language that you had also provided me. Then landscape lighting. So this is lighting, which I've decided to define to help to kind of hone in on what that means. And the definition proposed is lighting. That means lighting of trees, shrubs, other plant materials, as well as water features, sculptural objects, and flags. So that is regulated via the prevention of glare when viewed from adjacent property. The emitted light shall be substantially contained to the object intended to be illuminated. And then any luminaires with an output greater of 800 lumens, which is basically 60 watt plus light bulb, shall be fully shielded. The next permitted light type would be pathway lighting. Again, we've got the regulation about lighting along pedestrian pathways and vehicular pathways and driveways, a maximum of 3 feet in height. And then again, if the luminaire is over 800 lumens, which that's a pretty powerful pathway light, it needs to be fully shielded. Then patio and deck lighting. So these are luminaires adjacent to patios and decks. They're going to be restricted in terms of they can be mounted on the primary or conforming accessory structure adjacent to the patio deck or on poles that shall not exceed 9 feet in height. Dennis, that's the language that I incorporated that you provided me. Also, luminaires with an output greater than 800 lumens shall be fully shielded. Granville, your suggestion about the time of night when they should be extinguished, all is in here. All lighting on the side or rear shall be turned off at 10 p.m. That's concurrent with our noise regulations. So there are lighting and noise kind of marry up there at 10 p.m. except if it's lights with motion detectors, which shall have a 5-minute limit. That's recognizing security lighting that may be installed. And then finally, staff put back in security lighting. And I've included the definition as well, because I think that's really important. That's really why this whole process came about, was to help regulate security lighting. So security lighting shall be fully shielded and directed to prevent glare from an adjacent property, which is important. And on a motion detector, no more than 5 minutes. And I think this final language too is also important. Any motion sensor activated lighting shall not be triggered by any movement or activity located off the property in which the light is located. So you should be able to move around in your own property and not trigger your neighbor's motion sensor security lights. I saw that in a number of different cities that I evaluated in terms of how they regulate security lighting. And then just the permit section, that hasn't changed either. The not requiring a submission of a lighting plan. So staff's taking their best stab at reorganizing it, trying to make it straightforward. I did have a conversation with Commissioner Malin Smith about carriage lights the other day, and my review of carriage lights, and those are basically lights that you would find near the entrances of driveways or sidewalks coming off of streets. is that they would be permitted. We exempt lighting at the driveway entrance, building entrance from the illumination standards. And we also allow lights on poles up to 15 feet, which carriage lights are not going to be that height. I did do a review via Street View, and there's a substantial number of these lights in town. I would estimate anywhere from 10 to 20% of all properties I evaluated had some form of lighting at their driveway entrances, either standalone poles or on columns or brick walls or entrance walls. So I think it's important that we recognize that those exist and serve a purpose for safety in terms of entering onto a property from a street, be it neighborhood or arterial. So that kind of encapsulates the draft as it's been amended since the last meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Any questions of staff? Mr. Bolzina?
So I thought I read this, but you are closer to this right now. So even if we had a so-called coach light or carriage light, whatever the hell we want to call it, it's still limited by this 600 lumens. Is that correct? And you said or 800 lumens, which is a 60 watt equivalent of a 60 watt lamp.
If it serves as pathway lighting, it needs to be fully shielded. So it needs to be directed downward. So you can't see the luminaire itself.
Well, but I think Fred was talking about all of these, especially I drive down Mason Ridge every day, and there's certainly one or two homes there that has, I guess, what we call carriage lights. And they're not necessarily a pathway light. I mean, they're kind of a decorative light on a wall or near a driveway or near the walkway going to the front door, which, I mean, it's a pretty common use of lighting. And I thought we would capture that perhaps by just putting a limitation on what the output could be for those kind of lights.
Certainly. I mean, we could add that restriction at under entrance lighting or entrance lighting, I think would be the best location to add. And I'm basically would just be copy and pasting the output greater than 800 lumens shall be fully shielded as a subletter I under B, 2B. Yeah, I would think that would.
Okay.
Could almost just make that entrance lighting and lighting or something like that. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that would work, but you might want to tie that in.
Okay.
So anyway, I don't know how you're going to do it, but
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Bolzina, perhaps if we got a motion on the table, then you could propose an amendment to get that language.
Okay.
That's-
All right.
Do I have a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Aldermen?
I propose,
So moved.
I propose,
Mr.
Second.
White, and then do I have a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Mr. Malin Smith. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Mr. Bolzina, would you like to make an amendment?
well, why don't you go ahead and let me,
Or
I got to
discussion?
think about this a
Mr.
little bit.
McKnight.
So, quick question, Ryan, on the general requirements. Just to step back for a second, I really like the way that this has come together and the interactions and how we've made modifications to it. I actually think this is a much cleaner code than when we started out with. So I really appreciate your efforts to make this happen. One of the questions that I was looking at is in the general requirements section, you have luminaire orientation and then intensity of illumination. Is it your intention to say that you can point a light at your neighbor's property if it doesn't go over a certain threshold at the side? Because that's how this reads. And so I guess the question I had, and if you read the end of it, it's located within a registered zoning and emit light that exceeds the intensity limitations. And I guess I'm looking at that statement and saying, if you took out the and emit light that exceeds the limitations, you don't need that part of the sentence there. And it actually takes away from the requirement. So I'm going to make a motion to make that change And then on
I'm-
the second one,
Comfortable with that.
the second one along the same kind of lines, it's, I'm not sure the illumination challenge I think we have certainly does include lighting to light driveways. And so that second one we've taken off on part B, illumination, intensity of illumination. We've added in the end, lighting for the purpose of illuminating a driveway entrance or a building entrance will be exempt. I guess I'm reading this again. It's not driveway or building entrance. It's driveway entrance or building entrance. And I guess I'm trying to be careful not to make it so someone can put big lights out there.
Well, that's where I think Dennis's amendment's going to be, is going to solve that issue, because if you require full shielding, that light is going to shine directly down onto the surface underneath the light.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a glare issue. You're not going to have light trespass on a neighboring property at the driveway entrance. If Dennis makes that motion to amend to add that condition.
Yeah. And I think, and I'm looking at this, and I actually think it's probably better to say, to make it so you direct all those down. I mean, today we have all those building entrances that are just big shiny lights that glare out on the neighbor's property, which is, I would love to see that corrected because it is a problem. So, so I think I'm okay with this as long as we can figure out a way to just not exempt that and let people put beacons in their front, to shine everywhere at the entrance to their driveway.
Okay.
So those are the two things that I was looking at that I think are problematic, but I really like the way this has come together as far as describing it to people in a way that makes sense.
Further
So I still have this question that I don't know if we've addressed, but the people are putting fiesta lights or strings of party lights, over their patios. Where would that be?
As long as it's not higher than 9 feet in height, under patio deck lighting, luminaires may be mounted on the primary or on conforming accessory structure adjacent to patio or deck or on poles that shall not exceed 9 feet in height. Those kind of lights don't exceed 800. I specifically looked those lights up because they're very popular. Both my neighbors on both sides of me actually utilize them, and they don't put out a great amount of. It's more ambient light than anything, but they don't exceed that 800 limit that we set. So,
but as you said, they would be controlled by this 10 p.m. situation.
And the 10 p.m. and the height. Yeah, you're not going to hang them 20 feet in the air, according to this ordinance.
Yeah, I have a similar situation in my neighborhood. So, okay, great. So just let me know when it's appropriate to make a motion after everybody's discussed what they need to discuss. I worked out the wording.
Mr. McKnight?
I was going to say, I'm ready to make a motion, but if somebody wants to ask general questions or to get into the conversation, I'm happy to have that too.
Any further question or discussions? Mr. White?
It's a question of information, really. What are the ramifications of not requiring submission for a permit? What are the advantages and disadvantages?
The advantages, we're not over regulating our citizens because it would be completely onerous to require a lighting plan every time someone wants to install lights. I really see this addition as this gives us a foundation to enforce a problem. And people should be able to put the lights up that, to enjoy their property. But when you have glare and you have an intensity that, trespasses onto your neighbor, this gives staff the ability to go out and touch base with them and have a discussion and be able to take some corrective action. And that's really what this is intended to do.
I do appreciate that, and of course on the flip side, the danger would be the lights would appear, and then we have to take them down. That's where I see the danger is of not having a permit.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, I do see the issue of requiring a permit. I
Right.
do see the
It's a
onerous. It
balancing.
really is.
Balancing act. There's only
Yeah,
there's just me and Laura, so there's only so
Sure.
much staff to process what we process now, and this would just be another 5,000 plus residents. Well, 4,000 residences in town, and you look at every lighting plan.
Sure.
That's just it's quite a volume. So
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Bolzino.
Yeah, I agree that, it can be a problem, but I think most of the times the offender can probably correct the situation either by reducing the lamp size or providing a shield or directing it in a proper manner. I don't think it's going to, in most times, it's not going to result in the fixture being removed.
I can. Correct. And I'll give a real world example. We had the Promise Christian Academy built their school on South Outer 40, and they built next to some residences, and they put their parking lot lights up, and they're legal. But there was glare that the neighbor felt there was glare. So I reached out, we talked, they put a shield on, and it solved all the problems. And it wasn't a big deal. It really wasn't. They did it in a very quick manner, and everyone was happy. And they've got the lights on for security purposes in the parking lot. The neighbors can sleep without lights in their windows. So there's pretty simple solutions to these issues in terms of redirection and shielding.
So if I can hold the floor for a minute, and this I think equates with some of the commercial standards that we've adopted, or at least in special conditions that I know we approved for certain activities, that the lights either are turned off at a certain time or they reduce illumination to a code required minimum of a foot candle or so. Is that in our commercial lighting code about time of operation?
It differentiates between lighting for security and lighting that's non-security. Lighting that's non-security is supposed to be turned off at a certain period of time. I believe it's 10 o'clock.
Okay. All right. Okay, good.
Mr. McKnight?
Ryan, just remind me again, so if somebody installs one of these, it becomes part of a nuisance operation at that point, right? You would go out and into those, so that enforcement here is not to force everybody to do anything, but if somebody does something that's out of scope and it gets noticed and somebody doesn't like it, there is a step that they can take to try and address it. So
Yes.
I just want to make sure that was my understanding of this as well. So good.
It's just a mechanism that allows Ryan to have something behind him.
Yep. Okay.
Further discussion?
I'd like to propose an amendment that would go at section 2B, and it would be a new subheading I, and it would say luminaires with an output greater than 800 lumens shall be fully shielded.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Chairman Sema,
No.
I have did you say 800 lumens?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so what does that equate to about in wattage?
Ryan said it was a 60-watt lamp in the old style electricity.
So these would be, we're talking about those are the carriage. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
But they would also be lighting on the front of the house. So if you wanted to put a 150 watt bulb in the front of your house, you need to shield it and not have it glare into your neighbor's property.
right.
Yeah, like in the old days, you put a coach light next to the driveway that was next to the walkway that went to the front door. That was the old, everybody had one. Not so common anymore, but a lot of people have them.
All right, any discussion on the amendment? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? It appears to carry unanimously.
Cool.
Further discussion or amendments? Mr. McKnight.
I propose an amendment to this, section D, number 1A, luminaire orientation. I propose that we remove the wording after district, which would make it so that you have district period and remove and emit light that exceeds the intensity limitations. To
Second.
me, okay, I've already explained that, so good.
That was going to be one of my things too, actually, have on here.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion appears to carry unanimously. Further discussion or amendments? All right, we have an amended motion. Ms. Lowell, you call the roll.
Alderman Fauci,
Aye.
Mr. McKnight,
Yes.
Chairman Sema,
Aye.
Dr. O'Mell,
Aye.
Mr. Bolazina,
Yes.
Mr. White,
Aye.
Ms. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Munzel,
Aye.
and Mr. Malin Smith.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Ms. Lowell.
Thank you.
We do need a motion on the findings. Dr. O'Mell, do you like to take a whack at them?
There's a public need for the proposed use. The proposed amendment and proposed use are in compliance with the comprehensive plan. The property in question is suitable for the uses permitted under the proposed zoning. There are adequate public facilities such as a sewer and water and other required public services. The public health, safety, and general welfare will not be damaged. The land values of adjoining properties will not be damaged. The adoption of a proposed amendment is in the public interest and is not solely for the interest of the applicant.
Dr. O'Mell, do I have a second?
Second?
Second.
And then by Alderman Fauci. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion appears to carry unanimously. All right, agenda item number 2, subdivision text amendment and amendment to the regulation of grading and fill, section 410.200.a.7.a, specifically compaction standards, continued from our November 18th, 2020 meeting. Mr. Spencer.
Mr. Chairman, just as a quick recap, the staff brought this forward because over the spring and summer, we had an issue with some grading and fill with a new project, and it was determined we needed to strengthen our grading and fill standards. As part of that, Public Works Commission was recommending adoption of Appendix J to our building code, which regulates grading and fill material. And as part of that, we wanted to somewhat mirror that language in our subdivision code as it relates to lot development. There were some questions at the last meeting regarding this, and one of them was about the grading and fill near foundations. I believe that's been discussed, Mr. Malin Smith, with our project manager Tim Brandick. That's regulated through our IBC. Separately, we also reached out to some other engineering firms, such as Stock Associates, HR Green, Wrights and Jens, and they agree that this standard would promote cleaner fill. So again, staff is just trying to promote language that's similar to what we're adopting in our Appendix J. I understand there's street compaction language and other language throughout the code, and there may be a better time and place for that discussion, but staff would like to receive an up or down vote on what's proposed with these small text amendment changes at this time.
Questions or discussion? Mr. McKnight,
Can I make a motion just to, we can discuss it then?
please.
Move to approve agenda item 2, subdivision code amendment, and wording changes incorporated into that.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman. Mr. Malin Smith, did you have comments?
I did, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I want to elaborate on what Ryan just said. Recall at our last meeting, I was questioning the feasibility of implementing this amendment with the assumption that it was related to fill material being placed near foundations of new construction. And in a discussion the next day with Ryan and with Tim, Ryan, correct?
Correct, sir.
It was clarified that this amendment does not relate to fill material adjacent to or surrounding a foundation, and that that's covered elsewhere, and that this really relates to fill material being used to address depressions on the landscape of a site. And therefore, the regulation of the rock size and the distance between the rocks is far more practical and doable, because it's not talking about a trench around a foundation where the material would be not visible to inspection. So I appreciated that clarification, and I want to make certain that my fellow commissioners fully understand that as well. So thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. McKnight.
And I was just saying, I took some time to look this over too, and I'm thinking to myself, this is really an opportunity to bury a boulder or a set of boulders and basically describe that they have to be placed farther apart and filled around and then covered over by a certain amount, as opposed to the fill material that you're going to buy from someplace or place that way. This is like large rocks or chunks of rock that you're going to put in a place, and just what needs to happen
Yeah.
there. So it makes perfect sense to me that way too.
A good point.
Yeah, as I said, it has nothing to do with material being placed against the foundation. That's covered.
Further question or discussion?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, there's other sections that you might want to look at later. I pointed out a couple, but, and I think my suggestion was that the simplest matter would be to go ahead and refer to the International Building Code, which is adopted by the city. And as long as we mimic that language, we should be okay on compaction standards. So, but we, like you said, we can deal with that later, whatever other sections you'd like to bring forward. But I think the language you have here is pretty much close to what I suggested. So I think I would have to agree with it.
Mr. Malin Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, and I don't have the printed material in front of me, but there may be a typo in the actual language where it says rock. What's the next word?
Should be
Rock of similar.
I think it's or. It should be rock or similar irreducible material, not rock of. Because you're talking about a rock or something else, not.
Let me check one other place just to make sure, because I thought that was pointed out. Maybe I did fail to correct it, but let me.
Yeah, I think some of the, I don't know if it was original language or suggested language. It was like large rocks, concrete, and brick and you tried to make it more universal, which is great.
It is or. It is or.
It should be or. Yeah, the copy that you forwarded to us did not have the word or.
I must have copied and pasted a wrong version. I apologize for that.
Well, minor change.
We want to do a quick amendment on that or not?
I don't know if that's required, is it? Scrivener's error.
Michael?
The attorney says yes.
Attorney says yes.
Changes the meaning of it, so. yeah.
Ed says yes.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I think that can be clarified as a.
Opposed?
Mr. White.
My comment was the same as ex-Alderman Malin Smith, actually, Commissioner Smith, Malin Smith, was changing that of to an or.
Okay. Sounds like
So
it's not
that's the only
necessary for
comment I
a
have.
motion. We're just going to handle it as a Scrivener's error. Any other questions or discussion or amendments? Ms. Lowell, will you call the roll?
Mr. Malin Smith,
Aye.
Chairman Sema,
Aye.
Alderman Fauci.
Aye.
Dr. O'Mell,
Aye.
Ms. Munzel,
Aye.
Ms. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. McKnight,
Yes.
and Mr. White,
Aye.
and Mr. Bolazina.
Yes,
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Alderman Fauci, do you have a report from the Board of Aldermen?
I sure do. So you will remember the coverings that we recommended approval on for Katie's Pizza. And that did pass the Board of Aldermen, as did Doctopia coming to Manchester Meadows. We also just passed the 2021 budget. The full budget will be found on the website, so I won't go through all of the details with you. We are expecting about $1.6 million in revenue loss this year from depressed sales tax revenue due to COVID. But we did make up almost $744,000 of that with a CARES Act fund grant from the county, so that was good. The Staley Playhouse, you'll all remember, did just pass the Board of Aldermen. There were some substantial changes to it. It was reduced in height from 23.5 feet to 10 feet. The house was essentially brought to the ground. So the playhouse will be on the ground, and the roof will become a rooftop deck. It was done through a considerable amount of compromise from the neighbors and a lot of work. The other change is that it will go from now 199 square feet to 100 square feet. And there's going to be lighting on these stair tread risers for safety. But all parties seem quite happy with the changes, and it's going to be a wonderful addition to their neighborhood. The other final topic is that election filing is currently ongoing. It closes on January 19th, and there is one aldermanic seat in each ward along with the mayoral seat available. So if anybody feels like they want to run for public office, now is the time to visit your city clerk and sign up. And that's all I've got.
Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
So move.
Second.
Dr. O'Mell, seconded by Mr. McKnight. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, so
Great.
everyone, I hope you have a wonderful holiday, and we will see you